Well, if you'd like, you can go back every week.
Okay.
Oh, that's not.
Definitely not do that.
We are recording.
Okay. This meeting will come to order. Erda City Council meeting held on Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 at 7 p.m. We're in the Tooele County Auditorium located at 47 South Main Street, Tooele, Utah. This meeting is being broadcast over Google Meet and also YouTube. Start off with a call to order. Terry Miner.
Here.
Cal Martin.
Here.
Jess Bird is here. Craig Smith.
Here.
Scott Kazan.
Here.
We've got Jen Poole, our recorder, and also our counsel, Don Brems, here with us. Let's see. I have no idea whose turn it is. Terry, would you lead our pledge? Did you do it last? Do so good.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did you check the meeting minutes?
Checking for that. Okay, as usual, we'll go ahead and open up the meeting to public comment. And let us know if anybody's raising a hand on.
I do not have any raised hands at this time.
Going once, going twice.
Move we close public comment.
Second.
Second, we close public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. For those now. All right. Chair moves that we approve meeting minutes from February 9th and February 23rd of each year. Is there any discussion? And we need a second.
Second.
Then moved and seconded that we adopt these minutes or approve these minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Treasurer report.
Okay, for March, I made deposits either by the Stripe Fund or in person of $21,358.28, which was mostly the permits. And then I received 2 checks from Rocky Mountain Power. One was for February for $11,899.47, and one for March for $10,343.38. Checks written. Accounting for $750, legal for $5,000, city planner $3,031.25. Jennifer Poole salary $844.10. We got some checks for $196.58. CVE Technologies Group $293.42. Clerk salary $809.16. Workers' comp insurance $585. Ensign Engineering $15,973.75. Then we had 2 electronic transfers, $44 for state tax and $397.76 for federal tax, for a total of $27,925.02. On the credit card, $8.82 for Microsoft, $16.04 for Adobe, $750.74 for 18 yards of sand, $185 for 500 sandbags for a total of $960.60, and that was paid on the 22nd. And then, of course, at the end of this month, it'll be the end of the quarter, so it'll be law enforcement, dispatch, roads, all that stuff, so
Okay.
be prepared.
Questions or comments for the treasurer? Okay, moving along, we got a phone call from the, item number 13, the ranked choice, person, is on vacation, would like to be moved up. I will move that we, move agenda item number 13, up and, up before 7, so we'll start doing that immediately. We'll try to keep her time limited to maybe 5 minutes.
So you need a second?
Second.
I moved and seconded that we move this agenda item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That ranked choice option item.
So we need to decide as a council or as a city if you're going to go with traditional elections or if you want to do ranked choice voting. There's a pamphlet in there that talks about ranked choice voting. We did have a presenter come and talk a little bit about it. There's a sample ballot that I've passed out to all of you that goes with it that shows what it would look like. I have spoken with the county recorder, Tracy Shaw, she's the one that's online with us, about financially how it would be different for us as a city if you chose to do ranked choice voting. One of the big things with ranked choice voting is there's no primary election, it's just one election. So if for some reason we end up needing to have a primary, which means more than 2 people are running for one office. So if we even get 3 people for one specific district, we have to hold a primary, which means we have to send out the ballots twice and get charged twice if we do it that way. That's one of the benefits of doing ranked choice voting. I know that Mill Creek has done ranked choice voting. John, do you want to share some of the benefits or what you've seen with ranked choice voting in Mill Creek?
I'm 6 on it. It's a political decision. The problem that I have with it is Salt Lake County can only count 10. So if there's more than 10 candidates, what do you do?
Okay.
So I don't know if Tooele has the same.
So what Tracy has sent me is that there would be an additional cost because they need a specific laptop with a specific software to run the program for ranked choice voting. It would be different than what the county currently has. And Tracy, so if you want to chime in here on anything that I may or may not get wrong, feel free to comment at any time. The results would take a little longer to get, she says, but I'm guessing this would be a $1,000 expense to get the laptop, so a one-time cost. And she would likely just charge each jurisdiction a small service fee to utilize the equipment each election. So maybe not charge us to purchase a laptop, but charge us to use the laptop to correlate. Let's see, she says each year, so right now they're going to charge us $2 a ballot for elections. So if we have a primary, we get charged that $2 at the primary, and then we get charged the $2 again for the general election. She says some of the big differences is the largest factor is voter education. If we choose to do ranked choice voting, we also have to educate the members of the city about how to do ranked choice voting. And that would mean sending out flyers, holding town meetings, those kinds of things to properly educate the community about how to do it. Let's see. She's not sure on the exact price difference between ranked choice as far as like the inserts and the pamphlets that would be required to be sent out, but she thinks that the cost would be somewhat similar to around the $2 a ballot, but she doesn't have the specifics of that yet.
Hasn't this been on a couple ballots before and people have voted it down?
I think it's the city councils that get to decide if they do ranked choice voting. I don't know if the
We
citizens
did
get to
have a
vote on it.
presentation on it last year.
Well, I know, but I'm talking about, it seems like there was a statewide one, or there's been some before about ranked choice, and it's never been,
Well, I didn't realize it was Tracy on the phone with us, so why don't we let her speak if she,
Tracy, would you like to share some things?
yes.
what would it take to put it on the ballot so the people can decide? That'd be my recommendation.
How much lead time do we need before an election to have a decision like this made or done?
We have to let the, it's okay. We have deadlines to let the lieutenant governor know if this is what we're, I think it's May 1st. Tracy, am I right? That we have till May 1st to let the lieutenant governor's office know that this is the method that we're going to do as a city?
What would be the deadline to have it put on the ballot, the same?
But, so, there'd be a problem because you probably couldn't put it on until the ballot where the ranked choice voting is on.
We couldn't do it this cycle is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
You could commission a study, a poll, take the temperature of what the public thinks.
Like, why couldn't it be on this one? I mean, we got people running for office, and none of them have been put on yet. There's still time for them. Why wouldn't there be time for this?
I guess to put it on a ballot, you have to make a ballot. What date would the election be?
November.
You could do it sometime in June or July, but it's too late. You have to decide by April 28th.
I think so what Terry's saying is put it in the general election and then have it move forward in years forward,
Yeah, you
not.
could do that.
That's
If
what
you
I'm
want to
talking
do
about,
that,
having
just
it
do a regular
in a
election.
November
instead.
one and let them decide whether they want it from then on or not.
I think that's a good idea.
That's
I
fine.
don't think it's a bad idea to put it on the election, or to let the people decide.
The ones that are actually gonna be doing it.
I think ranked choice voting is a grand idea, but I'm not, I don't feel warm enough about it to even go
As far as putting it on a ballot.
put it on a ballot, so you won't see me pushing on it. But if anybody else, if we've got three others in the council that wants to push hard on this, I'm happy to support.
I think there's some benefits to it as I think through it. And I don't think we need to consider it as a money-saving thing. I don't think we're spending enough on elections that we need to be trying to save money. But if it can resolve some of the indecisions that people have about, well, if I'm gonna vote for Scott, but, because I've known him a long time, but I really think Craig's a better councilman, so I gotta vote for one or the other. Well, this way they can vote for both and just put a rank on it. And it might solve some heartburn for people who have a hard time making a choice or who really don't know who to choose.
I don't know.
Yes, please. You could
And
just,
that,
Trace,
yeah,
just
yeah,
an
that makes sense.
I don't know really that much about this, a little bit. I know a few people have done it. I read an article where Draper City had tried it and they are quitting. They're going away from it already. They had a train wreck. I've heard of other cities that felt it worked well for them. So it is still relatively new here in Utah. And I don't have a warm fuzzy either way, to be honest with you.
Just then have it put on the ballot and let the people that do the vote and make the decision instead of the five of us.
If we're gonna do it, I'd feel better about it than trying to make a decision.
So Tracy, I have a question. If we put it on a ballot, do we have to put in a pamphlet that explains what ranked choice voting is? Like, would that be an additional cost to put a pamphlet in with people's voting? Thank you.
Can we get a straw poll real quick? Who would be in favor of putting that on November's ballot
I would.
out of the council?
I think I would too, but
Scott?
I would be more in favor of tabling this so that we can do a little more of our own research
Well,
and,
that's what I'm saying. Is it worth researching? So we've got two saying it is.
yeah,
Is
I
there a
think so.
third? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not ready
All right.
to say, let's for sure put it on the ballot, but
We'll
let's
look
not,
into it.
let's not throw it out yet.
Yep, okay.
If we put it on the ballot, it lets the people that are voting decide, not us. Takes it out of our hands and puts it in their hands.
Right. Assuming that they know what they're getting themselves into, so. I'd be
Well, if we were for it, we wouldn't need it to go to a ballot. We just make it happen, so I don't understand that, I guess.
So maybe I could make a motion that we table this.
Well, there's no vote, so
Oh.
we can just move on.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
It's just a discussion.
All right, thank you, Tracy.
She's already gone. She's
All
out.
right,
She's out of here.
let's move on to
Happens at land
resolution
vacation.
23-07, a resolution of the Erda City Council approving the appointment of a community development director.
What is this about?
Could someone remind me who put this on
Please.
the agenda? Was that you? Bill?
Yeah, so our subdivision code requires a plat to be approved by the community development director. I don't know who that was, or who that is, so you need to appoint one. My guess was, for my recommendation, is Rochelle or Rachel, or Craig.
What do they have to do more of the reviews a lot the way that Rochelle is doing now?
Yes.
So if she was the community development director, she would have already made all of that research.
She would sign the plat, right? And there are certain things that the community development director does in the subdivision.
On their own.
Yeah.
I think Rochelle's the natural choice unless someone else feels strongly otherwise.
I don't know of anybody else.
I think she's by clearly the strongest choice for this.
You know, we kind of get 2 for 1, right?
Were you in favor too? Okay, well then, I'll move that we adopt resolution number 23-07, filling in, Rochelle Custer as the, community
Has
development.
she been approached?
Yeah, is she willing to do that?
Yeah, she's done it once already.
Oh, well, that speaks in our favor then, yeah.
I'll second that motion.
It was for, I can't remember the people's name. So to avoid them having to wait for this, I just made it
Okay.
terrible.
Okay,
It's a loose end that needed to be
Good.
tied up.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt this resolution. Any further discussion? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote. Scott?
yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Jess votes yes. Kale?
Yes.
And Terry?
Yes.
All right, we've got unanimous vote, and resolution number 23-07 is adopted. Michelle Custer as our new community director. Resolution number 23-08, resolution of the Erda Council approving rules of order and procedure to the Erda Planning Commission. The Planning Commission met together and voted some changes. I will read what I have here as changes. So regular sessions will be held on Tuesday starting at 7 o'clock or convened upon as provided herein. Work briefing sessions may be held before or after the regular session, alternate time of the commission chair's discretion. So they can hold work meetings. They would also like to amend it as follows. This is an addition. Items may be placed on the agenda by any member of the planning commission, a majority of the city council members, or by staff on behalf of an applicant who has filed an application and paid the corresponding fee. So those are the two changes before us today. Any discussion?
When I was in the planning commission meeting, when they went over this, they had 4 different ways of putting it on. One was by staff or by staff on behalf of an applicant who's paid a fee. So if someone in the engineering department sees a change that they know needs to be made, they can put it on. So they had those 4 ways of putting it on, not just 3.
Is Corey or anybody from the planning and zoning online or anything?
He was gonna listen.
Corey is online.
He's,
Can you ask him what?
he's traveling right now, so I don't know if he can participate.
I do remember what Craig said, that they did have 4, those 4 different ways. I did send this out to the different commission members and they didn't catch it at that time. But if Corey wants to weigh in, if he can.
And I'll just remind the council members that this is their proposed verbiage, but we can modify it, add and subtract before we adopt anything, so we can change it if we need to.
We need to put majority and then in parentheses 3 of the city council members? Or do we just assume we know that the majority is 3?
I think majority works because who knows, maybe one day we'll have a 6th district or something, or a 7th. This might last longer.
I just don't want him to say like, there's only 3 of us here one day or something. They said, well, 2 of us put it on, so that's a majority.
I see what you're saying.
So I'm saying,
Majority, that's the decision maker. There's 3, 2 for it.
But we can't, but we couldn't vote on anything without a quorum anyway.
Raise important.
Yeah, but our code says you have to have
We can't adopt anything without 3 votes.
3.
Still a majority.
It is. I honestly don't like that part of it anyway. I'll be right honest. I don't think it separates the 2 out very well if the city council has to have 3 members send something to the planning commission. At that point in time, we're almost telling them, this is what you should be doing.
my counter to that though is that it takes 3 of us for this people to consider speaking for the city. If there's just 2, you might be speaking for a committee, but you're not speaking for the city. In order to say you're speaking for this city, it takes at least 3 of us.
Correct, and it's like any member of the planning commission can put something on their agenda. We're not voting, if we put something on their agenda, it's not the city council voting to finalize it. We're saying, start doing your work.
Like what happened last time, I don't want them to assume that it's coming from the council when it was coming from a council members and not from the city itself.
Yeah, and we could clear that up where it could come from. I don't know if I would say go as far as any city council member, but I wouldn't be opposed to that. I know at the county, any county commissioner can put something on the planning zoning agenda for them to start working on. Be it whatever pet project, and we don't guide what they do. We can't tell them what to do. They're their own committee. If I tell them, hey, I wanted you to come up with how many chairs can be on that acre, I can't tell them how many chairs go on that acre. What they come up with is their own decision. But
Including a decision that says, table it, we're never gonna talk about it. Done. Not an issue.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that would be an option for them to say, no, this was the subject and we're not gonna address it.
Like I says, my whole point is if we're doing it as a city council, we should be representing the city. So it should take the buy-in for 3, not just a committee instead of the city.
I'm gonna have to go with Craig on this. If a majority of the city council members are putting something on their agenda, it's like the council is directing them in that, and we shouldn't be directing anything they do.
But even if it's 2, you're directing them. You're saying, here, I want you to do
We're
this
saying
on
consider.
behalf of the,
We're saying consider it, but asking for consideration but not direction.
same thing with 3. We're just asking them to consider. We're not saying, we're not making them. It just takes 3 to start the ball rolling.
it shouldn't take 3 people to start a ball rolling.
Should take
Depends on what you have in mind.
That's like I say, if you send something to them, what they do with it, how they form that ball and which direction they take it, is up to the planning commission that we appointed, and I think it's a very good planning commission. We should be letting them do the work and not hamstringing how the work even starts or if it should start. I mean, when
I
we,
don't think any of us should even be attending their meetings.
I think there ought to be oversight. I think the city council, we're the only ones that are responsible to the voters. And we ought to be supervising things that go on.
They're their own deal. We can't say both.
Yeah, we can't tell them,
We can't say they're their own thing.
we can't tell them what to do, but we ought to be there with them
So we're supervising.
and supervising. Yep, supervising is,
Supposed to be supervising.
well, but I think you're confusing the word supervision with the supervision the way it applies in the government. The supervisor in a government office is the director of that office. But a supervisor in general is one who just watches over and makes sure things are handled the way they should be handled.
You don't say anything, but when you talk, then you're advising and
Well,
you're supervising.
Here's an idea.
No.
We remove all mention of city council members putting anything on the agenda. So, no city council member, 1, 2, 3, or 5 can put something on their agenda, period. However, we know that any member of them can put something on their agenda, even without a second, is that right?
That's what it says here, apparently.
currently, I think
So-
that's what the code is, yeah.
So your job, if you want something on their agenda, you've got to lobby and get at least one person to agree with you on the planning commission, and they put it on the agenda.
I'm okay with that.
How hard is that? It's a 30-second phone call.
I'm okay with that.
And then that removes all argument, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then to Terry's point, that way we're not directing them what their agenda should be and what they should and shouldn't consider. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay,
Now we need to send it back to them to see if they agree.
we can modify it right now and pass it, and it's done.
I just wish we had some input from some of them.
They made their recommendation. That's the way this works. They make their recommendation, and then we pass.
They don't like council putting things on their agenda. So why wouldn't they be in favor of it?
I don't see how they could disapprove of it. I like the
If they
idea.
don't like it, they can go and talk about it and send us a new one. What do you guys think?
I'm in favor of that. Just eliminate that half of a sentence that says that it could be placed on the agenda by a majority of the city council members. We don't have that option, period.
All right, items may be placed on the agenda by any member of the planning commission. Strike,
Or by staff.
strike A
Yeah.
and majority all the way to 2 members.
Yeah,
Any member of the planning commission or by staff on behalf of an applicant who has filed an application and paid the corresponding fee. That's 2 ways to get something on the planning commission agenda. I think it works.
Yeah.
You
So-
want something on the agenda, you talk to a commission.
You probably gotta allow staff to put
Yeah.
something on.
So
Yeah.
there's 3 ways. Any member of the planning commission, by staff, or by staff on behalf of an applicant.
isn't that what it says?
Why?
No,
Why does,
So maybe placed on an agenda by any member of the planning commission.
yeah,
right.
why does staff get a direct lick at the popsicle if even a council member doesn't?
Because when the
staff.
legislature changes the law, somebody has to come in and make our ordinance match. So the staff goes through, looks at the changes, and then gives it to the planning commission to be changed. I've been on the planning commission, it happens every year. When there's updates that need to be made, the staff gets it from the legislature, they go through it, they should send it to the planning commission for the
Is
changes.
Ensign considered the staff? Who's the staff?
And that's, I have that question too. Who's the staff?
I would say,
Don, Rochelle, and Jen.
And Jake at Ensign, but like he'll prepare something and Rochelle will go over it and then she'll say, but it's usually because of an applicant. Anything that comes from Jake is because an applicant has either submitted a conditional use or a rezone and then they've done the legwork and then once it's ready, then they're ready to say, okay, now it's ready to go on the agenda. And so that's why staff, and so why Jake would be considered part of that staff, but Rochelle usually does most of the legwork and lets us know, hey, we're ready to notice everything and put it on the agenda. But yeah, so Jake would be considered part of that.
I would think he'd be part of our staff.
But if I'm a city council member and I wanna see something get on the agenda, I can now lobby staff as opposed to a planning commission member to get something on the agenda, which seems a little loophole-ish.
Does that mean as staff we could tell you no?
Yeah.
Would you be insulted if we eliminated that staff article for?
I think they put staff on behalf of an applicant for a reason, there's a reason they don't have staff on there. Doesn't mean I'm in favor of it.
I was there when they voted on it and staff was originally there.
It was.
Mhm.
Okay.
There was originally, they had 4 ways.
Then you're suggesting or by staff on behalf of an applicant.
It's on the agenda by planning commission member, staff, or staff on the behalf of an applicant. Yeah, I would,
Okay. So we're gonna insert staff before the word or.
I think that's what we ought to do. I'm in favor of that.
Okay, I'll move that we adopt this amendment. And the text will read, items may be placed on the agenda by any member of the planning commission, staff, or by staff on behalf of an applicant who has filed an application and paid a corresponding fee. Need a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend this proposed resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 3. All right, so we have an amendment to vote on anyway. Is there any other changes we want to see made to this document before we put it up for consideration? Everyone's okay with their work meetings changes before or after the meetings, or whenever they want? Okay. I'll move that we adopt resolution number 23-08 as amended.
Second.
Then moved and seconded that we adopt as amended. Any last discussion? Terry, how do you vote?
Nay. Yes.
Kel votes yes, Jess votes yes. Greg? No.
I'm
No.
a yes.
Scott votes yes.
Sorry, Craig, was that a yes or a no? That was a no?
Terry and Craig are no, rest of us are yes. And resolution number 23-08 is adopted. As amended. All right, resolution 23-09.
So I put this one on the agenda because they wanted to change their location. The ordinance basically contemplates that they make the decision. That's why I just put it on here so you can discuss it. I think
The
that's
actual
probably,
ordinances, they make the decision.
yeah, in a code.
So is there any reason to bring this up for a vote?
I think I actually said consent to the, instead of approve, so.
Oh, I see.
yeah, I think it, something like that.
Yeah, I just want to be fuzzy about it.
It covers any basis.
Change the ordinance.
It's there, it's done.
The only thing that goes along with this is I'd like to propose that the council buys them a webcam and a speaker bar with a microphone in it, so they have a second means of audio recording, and they can also do broadcasting if they want to.
Where do they want to meet?
The firehouse. It's one of those things, in my mind, it's a horrible idea when you have a perfectly good building here with perfectly good system, but it's where they wanna meet. I think that's their decision, I'll support them, even if I feel it's probably a bad decision.
Well, let's let them try it. Let's let them try it.
We don't really have a say in the decision anyway, but let's consent to it, shall we? Chair moves we adopt resolution number 23-09.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt this resolution, changing the planning commission's official meeting place to the fire station located 4162 4074. I'm gonna do all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, resolution number 23-09 is adopted. I'm sorry, consented. Resolution number 23-10, approving an interlocal agreement for dispatch services with Tooele County. This is just kind of an annual renewal of this dispatch agreement. Terry, I was gonna ask you, have the numbers changed much?
Yeah, it's gone up about 4,000. It's about 1,000 a thing. It went from 8 to 9.
Okay.
So it's 9,000 per quarter.
Yeah.
Yep.
9 something.
Hate to pay the money, but it's a bargain for what we're gonna get.
I don't see how we get by without it.
We don't. Grantsville City contemplated getting out of this years ago. They found out how much it was gonna cost them, and they now just pay the fee.
Economy of scale. Right. Well, should I make another motion?
Nope. I'll move that we pass resolution 2310, approving the interlocal agreement for dispatch services with Tooele County.
Second. We'll give it to Cal. Been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 23-10, approving an interlocal operative agreement with Tooele County for dispatch services. Scott, how do you vote?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Jess votes yes. Cal?
Yes.
And Terry?
Yeah.
All right. Resolution number 23-10 is adopted and passes unanimously. Okay. We've all been looking forward to it. Ryan Foster.
I heard you're looking forward to it. Do I stand here? Do I stand there? What's the best place to stand for this?
Usually at the
Probably right there.
Okay.
I guess.
All right, good evening. My name is Ryan Foster. I'm a resident of Erda. I'm also a professional designer, and I've got several decades of experience in branding and design systems over the years. And what I want to talk to the council about tonight is the identity and the design system for the new city of Erda. I think that symbols can be a unifying force within a community, a source of pride. I mean, if you look at cities that really have great branding, like the city of Chicago, you know, with the light blue stripes, the 4 red stars. I mean, everybody recognizes it; they know it. It's displayed anywhere and everywhere. If you've ever been to the downtown city of Chicago, I mean, it's that people love it, and people get it tattooed on their arms. And I think there's an opportunity for us as a new city to develop, something that we can all be proud of. This process kind of started for me last year when I noticed a It's called a logo being used on a Facebook group announcing urgency council meetings. And I don't want to disparage anybody's design efforts on the logo that was presented, but I mentioned to a couple of people that, hey, I thought it could be better. And so somebody asked me to say, well, if you think it could be better, why don't you do it? So I sat down and I tried to design a better seal for the city. It actually led me to quite a bit of research on the history of Erda, because I really wanted to take something that really represented the people and the place we live and the beauty and the history. And so that kind of led me to designing a proposal for an official seal for the city of Erda. I don't know if you all have the proposal in front of you. So this new proposal has, I think, really represents the history of the city itself, the names of it. So we've got 3 stars that represent the names of the settlement. Obviously, we weren't always called Erda. We've been referred to in times past as Tool Springs, as Batesville, as Rose Springs. So to represent all the various names that this community has had, I've got 3 stars that represent those historic settlements. I've got representation of wheat from our Elias Church Farm that represents the history of agriculture. Our world-class sod, born and bred right here in Erda. Our iconic clay barn that's right on Highway 36 that everybody recognizes as you come in, right where it says "Welcome to Erda." And then a train representing, how I believe the name of Erda got its name. If you look at seems like there's a lot of conflicting reports on how Erda was actually named, but it sounds like there was a history of a train station that was part of the Utah Western Railway, and it was called the Erda Station, and it's believed that that's how the name of Erda got its name. So that's my proposal. I asked the council to adopt this new logo as the official seal. This would be used for official communications, contracts, ordinances, and those types of things. So that's proposal number 1. From there, it kind of grew. I almost say kind of grew out of hand. But again, I've got a history as in branding and design systems. So one thing led to another. We started talking about flags. Last year and early this year, as there was talk in the Utah legislature about designing a new Utah flag. And I started thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great if our city had their own flag? So I sat down and I started designing a flag for the city of Erda, which I would like to present to the council. It's my gift to the community. This is the first prototype flag. If you look at at what all this means, basically we've got a blue canton. It's kind of a half circle. It's supposed to represent, the pattern that irrigation farming creates, the circular pattern as the water rotates around. The crest is the sago lily, which is our state flower. Not a lot of people know this, but the sago lily was actually named by Captain John Stansbury. And none other than John Muir himself spoke specifically about the sago lily and about Mormon lilies themselves in his book Steep Trails in chapter 9, appropriately named Mormon Lilies. So we've got the crest, and in the center, the beehive. This prototype has three circles, but in the latest design actually has a beehive in the center. The fesses, what we call the stripes, represent rows of freshly cut alfalfa. So I would like to present this to the city council and ask that we propose that you adopt this design as the new city flag. In addition to that, I have a proposal for what we call the civic logo or the informal logo for the city, which takes the crest from the flag and creates a center crest that can be used for informal applications, branding, marketing, communications, community events. And there will be this. In your package, you can also see various proposals for how we would actually use that in application. You can put it on T-shirts, you can put it on hats, you can put it on promotional gift items, for attracting businesses and those types of things. So, yeah, I want to keep it nice and short and sweet. This is my gift to the community, the gift to the city. I'm asked that you propose and adopt this as the official brand of the city of Erda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
There you put a lot of time and effort into this.
Yeah, I did actually. There's several months of researching the history. I actually spoke to several different community members. I've showed them the designs. I've got about 150 comments from the community, all of it overwhelmingly positive. People really like it. They appreciate it.
Incredible amount of research. Appreciate how you were able to do that research and then integrate it into your artwork. Pretty neat.
Thank you. And obviously, if you would like this, I'll have full design files I can provide to anybody that needs them.
I like our old logo myself. Short and simple. No,
Hey, we got the
Not
wheat right?
not bad.
What's that?
We got the wheat right.
That's where I started from. I put wheat on there, and then I tried to take the foundations of that. I just thought brown was a little boring. So again, don't want to I don't want to disparage anybody's.
For the soil, if you can have green for the alfalfa, we can have brown for the soil.
Absolutely. There was nothing wrong with the logo that you have there. I thought I'd enhance it a little bit.
I think the seal's actually pretty well thought out. Yeah, I don't think I'm sold on the others, but seal's good stuff. Appreciate it.
I like the seal.
Any other comments?
Thank you for your work. And I probably don't have this is the only thing I've ever seen about a city flag or a civic logo so I want to keep looking at this. And keep showing it to people that I know.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Nomination of an additional member to PED committee. See a resolution.
I don't think so. We didn't
I don't think we have a resolution.
do the original PID committee by resolution, so.
You're right, we did. All right, well, I will nominate Corey Warnick from the Planning Commission as a
Who's on the PID committee now?
PID committee member.
I'll second that.
Me and Kel, John, Jen.
Sheldon Birch.
What's that?
Sheldon Birch.
Sheldon Birch, Marcus from, and one other guy from Zions.
I think we always intended to have a Planning Commission member on there, but we just kind of spaced it that night.
We had discussed it that night and put Sheldon on there, but I think it was something that we'd said would be a good idea. Corey's shown interest and I'd be supportive of it.
As well. I think Corey would be an addition.
Been moved and seconded that we nominate Corey Warnick as an additional PID committee member. Any last discussion on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. He's nominated. All right, we've already done item number 13. And we now turn the time over to Mr. Darrell Anderson, Erda State's presentation and discussion.
So just I guess kind of a couple of thoughts. So why this gets warmed back up or something here. I'll give it a second. Projector was there in the last
Started.
century, so.
So first, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Approached the city a number of times over the last 6 months to kind of start this discussion and get some answers on how we're going to proceed with Erda Estates. As far as tonight, I kind of came with a little bit of an open slate. I'm happy to kind of go through some of the thoughts and some of the topics that I feel are relevant, some of the questions that I feel need to be answered. I'm also, it may be better, or another option would be for Erda City to present their interpretation and I guess thoughts for what the path forward is, just because we may agree on everything and then we can be done, or we'll know which ones we don't agree on and we can discuss. So I'll kind of take the lead from the council if you want me to proceed, or if Erda City wants to share some thoughts, however you want that to kind of proceed from here.
We'd love to see what you have prepared for us.
Okay. So just kind of moving down here, obviously, we're here for the Erda Estates Plan Unit Development. I guess you got to turn it on for it to work, don't you? There we go. So here's just kind of some of the questions that I feel like we need to answer tonight. And by no means is this an exhaustive list. I'm sure that there might be some others that come up, and maybe the city also has some. But at the very least, I would like to leave tonight with answers to these questions. The first one is probably the primary one, is just how does Tooele County's Chapter 9 apply? Once we have that question, if the answer is that it does apply, and that we're going to continue under Chapter 9 of Tooele County, then there's these sub-questions in there that I think need to be answered. And some of these, I've got a few comments or a little insight from Erda City where they might be thinking. I'm not sure if that's where you've ended up, but the first one there is just some discussion about the concept plan to the preliminary plan relationship. I've received some comments from Erda City that the interpretation or the desire of the city might be that we are kind of stopped at the concept plan, that we have an approved concept plan, and that might be where, I guess the process of approval and development stops. I personally don't find that in the ordinance, but I think that's a question that we might discuss tonight, or need to discuss tonight. The next one is, what are the start dates for the preliminary plan and the conditional use permits? We'll get into each of these in greater detail, but each of those has a 1-year time limit on them in the ordinance in Chapter 9. And what I need to know from the city is, what's the start date for that 1-year period? And like I say, we'll talk in detail on each one of these. The next one is each of those 1-year periods can be extended. And so I'll probably be requesting an extension tonight on each of those 1-year periods. The last one there that I came up with is in Chapter 9, in Chapter 9.7, there's some discussion about Chapter 7.4. So Chapter 7 for Tooele County is the conditional use permit chapter. And so it references 7.4, but at some point Tooele County has updated 7.4, and so they no longer coincide. And so we got to figure out what the implication of that is. And then I also put together just a couple of my thoughts on what other options might be. So if the decision of Erda City is not to follow Chapter 9, what other options might be out there? I came up with 2 or 3. Go ahead, Terry.
This whole thing's kind of confusing to me, so can you kind of explain it to me? Now, is this Erda Estates, was that the one that had a referendum? And was that on the concept plan? And then it was withdrawn, so the referendum went away?
So, good, oh, sorry.
And then it got changed to a conditional use? And so the conditional use, does that come under Chapter 9 as well? Or I'm kind of confused. If the referendum was here and then it was withdrawn, and that involved Chapter 9, don't they go hand in hand? That if we're going to try to say, okay, Chapter 9 is resurrected, does that resurrect the referendum?
So good question, great question. So yeah, let's take a shot at that. And also, as I'm going, feel free to jump in and ask any questions or whatever you'd like. So Terry's asked, was Erda State the subject of a referendum? And the answer to that is no. There was a development, a rezone on the same property as Erda Estates. So maybe I should back up. The Erda Estates is 156 acres, and it's just north of Cimarron Way, which makes that south of Excelsior. There's actually a field in between there. So you got Excelsior Schools, a field, and then Erda Estates, or just north of Cimarron is 156 acres. And so there was a rezone done on that, and a referendum applied to that rezone. They collected enough signatures, and so the rezone was repealed. Tooele County repealed that rezone, and so the referendum went away. I think it was one of, if you remember, I think they called it the Three Brothers. Does that sound right? Three Brothers referendums or something like that. And so there was, if you want to talk, I don't know if you want to call it a successful referendum because it never really went to the vote, but there was a referendum against the rezone. That went away. And then there was a period of time where nothing was, the property was just sitting there. And then we submitted a PUD application under Chapter 9 for this property that was called Erda Estates. And that's what we have going forward. And the PUD under Chapter 9 for Tooele County was a conditional use permit. That's where you get the conditional use permit component of this. And it was administrative. So only approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission level, so it was not subject to referendum. And so there wasn't any referendum. There was a lawsuit filed against the county for approving Erda Estates, and that was dismissed by the Utah Appellate Court on November, I think 10th or November 11th of last year.
But that wasn't based on the merits, right? That was just based on who brought it.
Yes, well, no. So Erda Community Association sued Tooele County for approving the PUD. Tooele County filed a motion, and John, correct me if I'm using the wrong terms here, but filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit because they felt that they had not exhausted their administrative remedies. The district court said, that's correct, they have not exhausted their administrative remedies, but we believe one of the 4 or 5 exceptions would apply. So we're going to dismiss Tooele County's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. Tooele County appealed that verdict or motion or ruling, I guess you call it, that ruling by the district court to the appellate court, and the appellate court overturned the district court's ruling and said that the Erda Community Association had not exhausted their administrative remedies and none of the exceptions would apply. And so the court case was dismissed. So I don't know if that answered your question. I think your question was, did it get to the meat and the merits of the lawsuit? No. It was determined that they didn't have the right to get to there. Okay, so I guess just going on to the next one here. So I thought it would be good to kind of just set some of the foundation, just kind of the groundwork, so that we're hopefully all on a little bit of the same page as we start into this discussion. So the first one there is I think it's important to recognize that we have an approved PUD with vested rights, and that's under a conditional use permit. I think that, and I'm still kind of trying to get my mind around the conditional use permit, but it is significant that it is under a conditional use permit versus a rezone or something like that. But to some extent, we're probably not here tonight in any fashion discussing whether Erda Estates is going to happen. I think what we're here discussing is how are we going to determine what it looks like? How are we going to determine? I've asked for probably 6 months now to have Erda City's input on how it looks. I think that's important. And so I really think that's to a great extent what the question is tonight. The next one is, the landowners, whatever we decide, we can't put ourselves in a situation where we jeopardize or relinquish any of our vested rights. I just don't see us coming to a situation where we would be comfortable with that. The next thing is whatever we decide to do, however the path forward is, obviously it needs to be legal. You know, we got to follow the law. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those laws tonight. And then the last one is, I think it's kind of good to look at what I call tie goes to the runner. Tie goes to the landowner, I guess I put there. So let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So in the state statutes, in LUDMA, which is the act that governs land use and land development in Utah, we find this language in 306. And these two I both think have some important information that helps us kind of set the groundwork. So number one there says, a land use authority, so that'd be the city, you're the land use authority, shall apply the plain language of land use regulations. So what that does, I'm probably as biased as they come on, my view, and I'm sure there's other biases on the other side, but what we have to do at times is step back and actually just read what the plain language is. What does the ordinance, or what does the law say? Not what we hope it says, not what we want it to say, but what does it actually say?
That comes to interpretation. That's why they got judges.
That's why we got attorneys and judges, right, Don? So now I'll admit that, this is probably the starting point. There are times that we do have to go on, and John can correct me or probably give us more insight, where we might have to go to what is the legislative intent of a law, or some of those type of things, and that can get very complicated. But the starting point is we look at the plain language. What does it literally say in plain English? The next one there is, if a land use regulation does not plainly restrict a land use application, the land use authority shall interpret and apply the land use regulation to favor the land use applicant. So one of the things that I was asked to kind of come tonight with was, the city said to me, Daryl, come and show us in the ordinances where you can do what you're asking us to do. And I says, okay, I'm happy to do that, and I actually see some merit and some value in that. But I think that's probably kind of half the story. Definitely, I need to come and say, hey, this is why I think I can do it, this is what the ordinance says. But I think this actually kind of flips that a little bit and says to the city, if you want to restrict something, show the language in the ordinance that says you can restrict that. So as much as I have to be able to show it's allowed, I think a little bit more than that, the city needs to show that it's not allowed. And that might be an oversimplification of that, but I think that in general terms, that's kind of how I read it. All right, also in LUDMA, a couple of sections later down in 509, 509 is where we start to talk about vested rights. And if you remember back on probably my second slide, I said that Erda States has vested rights. Some of the comments that I got back from Erda City is that we may be stopped with our approval process right where we're at. And that's at the concept plan, that we may not be able to go to a preliminary plan or a final plan. I've also got some comments from Erda City that, our minimum lot size might be 12,000 feet. And
Can I ask you, when you say Erda City, who's telling you this?
Yeah, I have that question too.
those two particular came from the city planner, discussions with the city planner. So when I look at the ordinance, when I look at the state statutes, because that's what this is a state law, I don't find that supported in there. So let's talk a little bit about what I see in vested rights. So there in the first paragraph of 509, it says the applicant who has submitted a complete land use application as described in section 1C, including the payment of all application fees, is entitled to substantive review of the application under the land use regulations, in effect on the date that the application is complete. So my plain language of that is, the day that we put in our application and paid our fees, we are vested to have that application reviewed by the ordinances that were in place on that date.
Chapter 9, Twilla County Code.
That's my take on it. It's chapter 9 of Twilla County.
They got repealed.
It is repealed, and that's another important thing that Terry brought up.
That's telling you can repeal it all day long, but it's in effect the day that he made the application.
Yeah, and Terry's got a good point that, chapter 9 was repealed by Twilla County, and I think that that's a good point. But again, I think my assertion is it doesn't eliminate our vested rights. And then just a few paragraphs, so we're still in 509, so right down below, this down in paragraph D, we find this. It says a subsequent incorporation of a municipality or a petition that proposes the incorporation of a municipality does not affect a land use application approved by a county. So I think the legislature, in my mind, is very clear on what that is. It simply says that if you have a vested right granted by the county and a city incorporates, those vested rights are still there. They're not impacted by the incorporation of a city, not affected by the incorporation of a city. So my thought is, if the desire is to say that Chapter 9 doesn't apply, or that maybe some of it applies but the other part of it doesn't, and that negatively impacts our vested rights, the only way that can be accomplished is to somehow get beyond these two statements. And I'm not sure how that can occur.
I have a question that could strike to the heart of all of this. If we could define what those vested rights are, is that density? Is it something else? And then, and this is for John, and I don't want to put you on too much on the spot tonight. I don't think we're making any decisions tonight, but we should define what those vested rights are and what, if changes are wanted on the side of even both parties, what mechanism do we have to bring those about, if any? Does that sound about right?
To some extent, that may be the exact question of the entire night.
Okay.
So when he's through, I got some thoughts.
Fantastic.
Well, backing up on that other slide, when it says on this date, does that mean like the 156 acres? That's part of that, so it's only 156 acres on that date that we're talking about?
Correct.
And that's 156 acres to right now, is that?
Correct. So if I understand your question, I think the answer is yes, that when we put in the application for Erda Estates, it's probably really not 156, it's probably 143. The parcel is 156, and I may be getting too technical here, and if I am, say we don't need to get to that level. The parcel is 156. We left, I think it was 13 acres on the east side out of the PUD because the contemplation was that would be commercial. And we're actually, before planning and zoning next Tuesday, rezoning that 13 acres to commercial.
It's still part of Erda Estates.
Technically, it's not. I mean, Erda Estates is 143, give or take, acres. The parcel is 156. So sometimes I refer to it as 156. I probably technically should be more accurate. It's 143 acres, give or take.
What kind of density did you apply for on that application?
I can't do the math in my head. So take 330 or 328 and divide it by 143. It's 2 point something.
330 divided by 143.
3.
2.3.
2.3 units per acre. Okay, so Jess, you said, what are the vested rights? In my mind, these are the vested rights. I'll show you in the next slides why I come up with this. So in my mind is, what did the concept plan establish? So when Tooele County approved the concept plan for the PUD, what did they actually establish? In my mind, it's these four things. One is they established the basic character and scope of the PUD. Now, I'll grant you basic character is probably a little nebulous, but I think we can get our minds around what that means in here in a minute. The scope, to me, is what's the footprint? It's the 143 acres. The next one is it established the land use. In this case, it's residential. The next one is it set the density, and that density is either at 328 or 330. To be quite honest with you, it's not a hill that we're willing to die on. If it's 328, as long as we get what we feel is like some good cooperation with Erda City, and Erda City says, hey, we'd rather it be 328, we'll do that. But there, in my mind, there is still probably a little bit of an outstanding decision or discussion on if it was 328 units or 338 units. Again, it's not a hill that we're going to push. And then the fourth thing that was established was there was 5 conditions that were imposed at the approval of the PUD. So in my mind, these are whether you want to call them the parameters or the things that are, established for the PUD. And so now let's talk about where I get this from. So now we're in Chapter 9, Tooele County, and as Terry pointed, it was repealed after that, but I still think it's where the vested rights are at. In the first paragraph of Section 6 there, it says, the concept plan is intended to provide the applicant an opportunity to submit and obtain review of a plan showing the basic character and scope of the proposed plan unit development without incurring undue cost. So in my mind, this is where I'm saying it established the basic character and the scope of it. I also think that this last little bit here is also important. As I've said, I've got some feedback from Erda City that there may be a determination or a belief that we're stuck with the concept plan. With exactly as the concept plan looks, that's what we're going to have to build. And I've already said to you guys in a couple of past meetings, if that's what we have to, okay, we'll do that. But I don't think, A, it's best for Erda City, and I also don't think that that's supported in the ordinances, that opinion is supported in the ordinances. So as I was saying, I think we set the basic character and the scope of the project. And I also think, when I hear concept plan, to me it's a draft. It's a rough draft. It's not a detailed land plan. It's not a plat. It's not an engineered layout of the thing. It's a rough draft. That's what concept means. And I think that when you say without incurring undue cost, that's what it's kind of implying. Is just a starting point. It's a concept plan. It's a draft. Okay? So now we go down to paragraph 5, and in here I think we find the establishment of some of those other things. So it says, if the Planning Commission approves the concept plan with or without modifications or conditions. So that's what we have here, is Tooele County's Planning Commission approved the concept plan with conditions. So they approved it with 5 conditions. Okay? It shall adopt a motion establishing the land use, which in this case was residential, and density of the proposed plan unit development. So in my mind, when I say these are the 4 things that were established, that's it. The basic character, the scope, the use, the density, and they impose 5 conditions. Let's read on a little bit here, because this is where I think it also gets interesting, where somebody might say, hey, well, but it says this. So the authorizing the applicant to submit an application for a preliminary plan consistent with the approved concept plan. So some people have said, hey, it says it has to be consistent with the concept plan, so you're stuck with exactly what that concept plan looks like. In my mind, that's not what consistent means. If the county wanted it to look exactly like the concept plan and there was no option to adjust that going forward, they would have said that. It has to appear exactly like. They said consistent with. Now, just as a frame of reference, and I don't want to overstate this, so I'll be clear on what it was, is I was actually in this building a little while ago, a couple of months or so ago, and ran into one of the county's attorneys. And I just said to him, so this is just off the top of his head, I'm not saying that it's, anything other than just an attorney's opinion. I said to him, I said, give me a legal definition of consistent. And he said, not contrary to. Now again, I'm sure that John will probably, hey, we can come up with 50 different definitions of consistent. And so I'm not trying to say this is the only one or the right one or the legal one. All I'm trying to say is that consistent, in my opinion, does not mean exactly like. This next sentence here, I think, is also important. And to be honest with you, I probably read this 50 to 100 times before I could get my mind around what it says. But I think I have my mind around what it says. So it says, every such motion. So what are the motions? Well, in my mind, the motion is right here. It says that they're going to do a motion putting conditions in place, establishing the land use and the density of the project. And then I would be fine if we wrote those two in there also. But it says every such motion shall be expressly conditioned upon approval of the preliminary plan. So how I interpret that is it says these motions here are going to apply to the preliminary plan. The preliminary plan needs to follow the conditions that were put in place, the land use, and the density. And like I say, if we want to throw those two in there, I would agree that they probably are in there too. So really, the preliminary plan, if we want to tweak it, adjust it or something, we can do that, but we got to live with the basic character, the scope, the 5 conditions, the land use, and the density. Okay, let's go down here because there's another paragraph that also I think has some wording that's interesting and potentially relevant. So down in paragraph 6, it looks like it's just the next paragraph. It says, unless the applicant fails to meet time schedules for filing the preliminary plan, or in any other manner fail to comply with any condition or approval required under this chapter, the county shall not, without the consent of the applicant, take any action to modify, revoke, or otherwise impair the approved concept plan pending the application of approval for the preliminary plan. And now we get to really the relevant sentence. In submitting an application for preliminary plan approval, the applicant shall be bound by the approved concept plan with respect to each such element. So in my mind, what does each such element mean? I don't think it's overly clear, but what I would argue is each such element is exactly what we've been talking about. These are the elements that it's referencing. So when we submit a preliminary plan, it has to comply with each such element, that being those 4 elements.
Now, on the start date on this, is that 2019?
This was approved December the 6th of 2019.
December 4th.
December 4th? Sorry, December 4th, 2019.
So that's when the clock starts running. Now, were you guys under a TRO? Is that why you couldn't go further, or you just chose to wait until after the court cases?
So I don't believe that the clock started. That's one of the questions we have, and I don't believe the clock started running that day. John will probably have a better way of wording this, but my understanding is that clock has stayed until the court case is dismissed. And if you think about it, I came to you guys in October, August, September, probably September, October, and says, hey, can we have this discussion? And what was Erda City's response to me? No, until the court case is dismissed or ruled on.
Who told you that?
The city council.
I don't remember that.
Do any of you remember that, or do we need to have that discussion too?
But I'll take your word for it, but I don't remember things from yesterday. So,
I don't remember what happened for breakfast.
I mean, we can go back and watch the videos.
I think that makes perfect sense. I think that makes perfect sense.
And so the point is, and John, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but I think while everything's in the court case, the clock is stayed.
I have some thoughts on that we can talk about.
I know that's true on a TRO because it's a restraining order, but if you don't have a restraining order, I don't understand why that would automatically cease to exist.
I guess I would say, then why was the answer in September, October from you guys no? Okay, let's look at it from a different direction. So this is where I'm coming up with that, but let's look at it from a different direction. So chapter 9 says that there's a 3-step process for the approval of the PUD. You submit the concept plan, and then you submit a preliminary plan, and then you submit a final plan. And even after you get to the final plan, there may be a reason that you need to do modifications. So in chapter 9, when we submit a final plan, there's this language that says the Planning Commission shall either certify that the final plan complies with the approved preliminary plan, or refuse to certify the final plan for lack of compliance. And this paragraph says, if it doesn't comply, here's how you deal with it. So really what it's saying is that when we submit a final plan, the city checks to see if it complies with the preliminary plan. And if it doesn't, this is how you deal with it. And then, once you have a final plan, if you want to do some modifications, for whatever reason that is, it says, a final plan as finally approved and certified in accordance with the provisions of this chapter shall not be modified except in accordance with section 9.8. And then 9.8 is a whole section that talks about that, whether it's a minor or a major adjustment, how you deal with it. So why this is telling to me is why is there nothing over here?
You see, that's where you get vested rights. Is that what you're saying in the concept plan?
No, I do not believe that the concept plan gives us vested rights. What I believe gives us vested rights was the day that we submitted an application and paid our fee. That's what gives us the vested rights. And that's what you're vested in. You're actually vested in the ordinances that were in place on that day, not the concept plan. And that's another thing that Erda City has suggested to us is that the concept plan is actually what we're vested in, and I don't see that in the law. We're vested in the ordinances that were in place on the day that we submitted our application and paid our fees. So what I'm saying here is why is there none of this language here? And my assertion is because there's no expectation that the concept or that the preliminary plan look exactly like the concept plan. There's no expectation in the chapter that you, when you get a preliminary plan, you go back and see how it compares to the concept plan. On these steps, you do that, and there's mechanisms for dealing with it. Over here, it's silent on it. And I assert, because there's no expectation, that there wouldn't be changes between the concept plan and the preliminary plan. All right, next one here is, I said that I kind of thought some options, and I have no idea if these options are what the city would like. If the city sees them as viable, whatever. There are three that I think have been discussed. The first one is that we follow Chapter 9 as written. I honestly think that's what the law says, but I guess we can look at that. The next one is, this was also suggested, maybe we set Chapter 9 aside and we move to the subdivision code of Erda City. So we move to Erda City subdivision code, but we maintain those four things that were established by the concept plan. So really in my mind, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, Chapter 9, the city might say this, we don't believe that we have a Chapter 9 or that it applies to us, but we'll just go to the subdivision phase.
What are the 5 conditions?
I have a slide a few more later. Can we look at it then? Or and really, to be honest with you, they're not that relevant. They're not that significant. They're good ones, but they're like, yeah, okay, of course, we would do that. The other one is Erda City may choose to come up with a new ordinance that would help address this situation. There may be other options. Those are 3 that either I've thought up or people have suggested. Any thoughts on any of that? Okay. Now let's get to one of the other questions that I had on that second slide is the 1-year requirements. So really all these two, and I probably won't take the time to read it in detail, but what the first one says is that we have 1 year to submit the preliminary plan. So after the concept plan is approved, we have 1 year to submit the preliminary plan. And then the next paragraph says, no planned unit development conditional use permit shall be valid for a period longer than 1 year. So there's really kind of 2 1-year windows that we have to meet. My question to Erda City has been, what was the start date for those 2? Erda City has said, well, in the discussion, so I don't want to say that this was a final thing, is probably November 11th. And I says,
Is this Rachel still that you keep saying, or is it Rochelle?
yeah. And I says, well, that makes sense to me for this one, but it makes no sense down here. Because to me, you can't have both of them started at the same time. Because that would mean we literally only have 1 year to do preliminary plan, final plan, preliminary subdivision, final subdivision, and get a building permit. I don't think that's what it says, or is even feasible, or what the intent is here. But I don't know, I have some thoughts of where this 1 year period started. But that's a question that we need an answer almost immediately from Erda City.
Isn't it kind of talking two separate deals?
Yeah.
This is a conditional use only, and then that's the planned development deal. So,
Yeah, I totally
so
agree.
what throws it into mess is when you're kind of trying to do two at the same time.
I agree. I agree that they're two different things, and I think that they are two different steps in the process. And I think there's a period between them. And that's what I need to know from Erda City is, when do these two start?
Well, my thought is pick a lane. Are you going this way or are you going that way? It's
No, I have to do both of them. I have to drive down both lanes, and I only got a year to do each of them. And I didn't know when that year started. Okay? So now the next one is, and I won't read this in detail, but really what it says is it says, hey, you can get an extension on the first one from the Planning Commission. And then it also says you can get an extension from the Planning Commission also on the second one, if you ask in writing. So what I'm asking is, consider this our written request for extensions of the preliminary and the conditional use permit requirements. And we ask the City Council to place these extensions on the next Planning and Zoning Commission agenda.
So what's the good cause?
What's the good cause? It gives us time to figure out all these questions. Otherwise, my choice might be that come next Tuesday, if we don't get an extension from the Planning and Zoning Commission, then I probably need to say to Jake, start the engineering on the concept plan as it is drawn. We have 8 months to get a building permit. I don't think that's the best thing for Erda City, and we can talk about why I believe that, but I think that's where that puts me. That's the corner it paints me into. Is that I think that in essence what I would be hearing from Erda City at that point is, we're not interested in discussion, we're not interested in figuring this out, and we're not interested in having input in on what this looks like. So proceed as whatever you feel appropriate, Daryl. And my only option at that point is to take the concept plan that's been approved, have Jake engineer it, and we'll submit the applications to you guys. Again, I don't think that's what's best for Erda City, and we can talk about why I don't believe that. So again, that's my formal written request that those two extensions be put on the Planning and Zoning Commission's agenda.
We can no longer place anything on the planning commission's agenda, but we can ask one of them to put it on the agenda.
Fair enough. And maybe Rochelle can, no, how did that, I can't remember what we did.
The staff can
Do
do
you need to
it.
send it in an email to make it actually written?
Well, I'm more than happy to do so, and I thought that, to me, that's written. But yeah, let's probably be a little more formal, and I'll put it in.
Just for grandma request purposes, it would make my life a whole lot easier.
Sure, it's your public record. We're standing in a public meeting. But I'm happy to put it in an email.
So if you could just send me or Rochelle an email. we can
Absolutely. Absolutely.
On the agenda.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about this. So what we have on the top is the concept plan as approved on December 4th, 2019. This is our latest updated concept plan. Now, I'm not saying that this is exactly what we would submit to you, but this is the latest one we've got. We're probably on version 10, to be honest with you. And so let me talk to you about what the changes are and why I think it's actually better for Erda City. So over here on the right, we have SR 36. So this is Highway 36. If you'll notice in the first one, the high-density residential, the townhomes, is clear out on the west side, so basically out on Cochrane. To me, that doesn't make good community planning. And so what we did is we brought the higher density residential up here. This is good community planning. You have your commercial. Next, you go to your higher density. You buffer that to your single families, and you go out into your larger lots. So to me, I would think Erda City, the residents of Erda City, would rather have their higher density residential up on Highway 36 and not out on Cochrane. The other thing that we've done is that there's 100 townhomes here. I think this one is drawn at 80. So we've actually dropped the high density residential by 20 units. Now granted, we've added some fifth acre lots, as I think what these are. Fifth acre lots here. But I think in general, I think the residents of Erda City would rather have more single family and less townhomes. The other couple of changes I think are important for Erda City, or relevant, or would be a positive, is this is that 13 acres of commercial that I told you is outside of the PUD. This little dotted line here is the boundary for the PUD. So this is the 143, and this is the 13. So this was commercial, or hopefully will be commercial. There's a frontage road here that'll be built. To me, it makes sense to have commercial on both sides of that frontage road. If we're going to have a frontage road, let's have commercial on both sides of it. I think that's in the benefit of Erda City. For a number of reasons. There's plenty of different types of commercial that don't need and don't want to pay for and maybe can't afford highway frontage commercial. But they need to be in a commercial zone. So let's put it over here where it's commercial for the businesses that need to be in that zone, but it's a more reasonable price than highway frontage. It gets Erda City more commercial where you actually can build it because you're going to have sewer, water, and a road.
What was that on the original one, the first one?
Well, it's right here.
I mean, the entry spot, what was planned to be there?
Sorry, this one?
Darryl, on the right-hand side, yeah, right there.
That says put parent parcel is actually what it says. That was what Ensign Engineering called it. So I think what they're saying is it's the leftover. It's the stuff that's excluded from the PUD.
So it's not commercial, it's not anything.
Currently, it is not commercial. Next Tuesday, we have a rezone application before the Planning and Zoning Commission to rezone this and the Mike Presley 5-acre parcel here to commercial.
So assuming that goes through, commercial, the original amount, the original design of commercial is going to stay the same. But with your proposed changes, we're adding more commercial, making less townhomes, and we're moving the townhomes closer to the
Yes.
frontage road.
So Erda City's going to get, in this plan, and I'm not saying this is what we're submitting, but this is the latest, Erda City's going to get more commercial and less townhomes.
Are there any other significant changes?
Yes, right here. So if you'll notice, this is the ag preservation ground. I can't remember the acreage on here, but you'll see that it's actually larger. I think it's a 5-acre increase. I may be wrong on that, but you're actually going to get a larger open space of ag preservation. One of the conditions that Terry asked about, we'll get to, is that this is required to be actively farmed. Has to be actively farmed. So you get an increase in your open space. To me, those are the reasons why it's better for Erda City to say, hey, you know what? We don't want to get this stuck on us. Let's figure out what works best.
Daryl, are those 1/4-acre lots up against the 5-acre lots?
Yeah, 3 acres.
3rd acres?
3 acres here.
So were the ones prior to that 1-acre lots?
These up here were 0.7 up to 1.
Okay, so what,
And then what they've done in here is they've actually put a trail in here. So if you'll see that, that's a trail. And really what they've done is, okay, we realize that we've dropped the size of these. Let's actually put a trail in there so they're actually not neighbors.
okay,
So we actually don't share a fence between these 3rd acres and the stuff on Cimarron. So yeah. And actually, I believe there's actually more 3rd acre lots in this drawing than there is up here.
yeah, you can tell that.
I think it's died. There we go. So, Terry, you asked what the 5 conditions were that were placed at approval, and here they are. I don't know if you want to read them in detail, but the first one I think basically says that when we submit the preliminary and final, we need to talk about where we're getting our water from, where we're getting our sewer from, and what's the trails and landscaping going to look like. Well, of course. The next one says, hey, the agricultural preservation stuff needs to actively be farmed and needs to be held by an HOA or something similar. Well, of course. The next one says, the 3 houses on the farm lots, each of those had 3 farm lots, needs to look like a farmhouse. I'm not sure what that is, but it needs to look like a farmhouse. And then the 4th one says, you got to deal with your stormwater. Well, of course. And the 5th one is, hey, you might want some additional parking. Okay. But yeah, I mean, so those 5 conditions were placed at approval, and we absolutely would honor and agree with all of those. And that's my last slide. Any questions, comments, personal insults?
Hey, John, you're up.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what Don has to say.
Okay. You got some slides too?
No, well,
So conceptually, the new plan is, in my legal opinion, as a planner, the new plan is better than the old plan. So I would encourage you to try to move towards that. But so let me just give you some thoughts and some things that I've been thinking about. I don't think there's any question that they have vested rights. The question is, what are their rights vested in? And I'm still wrestling with this, but they're probably vested. I'm just thinking out loud at this point. They're probably vested in Chapter 9 of the Tooele County Code that was repealed. So what does that then mean? It means we may have to look at that to determine how to proceed. So I read through it, and a couple things caught my attention. And that is the 1 year requirement. I don't think there's any question that the 1 year started December 4, 2019. Because that's what the ordinance says. I think the question they would raise is there a tolling or is there a stopping of that time period while they're in court? The ordinance doesn't say.
I think it's perfectly reasonable that the clock is stopped while he is stopped in his process.
Well,
Reasonable and legal are two different things.
I guess that's a yes and a no because the provision says that subject to an extension of time granted by the Planning Commission unless a preliminary plan covering the area designated in the concept plan has been filed within 1 year from the date the Planning Commission grants concept plan approval, the Planning Commission approval of the concept plan shall automatically expire and be rendered void.
So if they'd have went to the planning commission.
If he would have gone back to the Planning Commission and said, how about an extension? I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you, if we get into a fight, that's what I'll be arguing and your attorney will be arguing, tolling. We'll see what the court says. But I don't want to get to that point because I think this makes a perfect recipe for another solution that I'm going to get to in a minute. So this has gone through all sorts of ombudsman's opinions, etc. Let me hit a couple more points. He showed up here on the slide adjustments to development plans. And my read of it is you can do minor modifications to the concept or to the plan. It doesn't really say concept plan, so it's really kind of fuzzy at this point. And it specifically identifies what minor adjustments are. But then it says you can do major adjustments, but you have to go through the process. Now, one of the things that also caught my attention is they filed a new application on March 3rd. So does that then terminate the prior application?
What year was it?
This year,
This year.
February 3rd.
February or March?
March. March 3rd, they filed an application for this new concept plan. And they said that we're gonna make some minor alterations. I'm not so sure they're minor alterations.
I have to be an expert on that.
What's that?
So
Oh,
I have to be an
minor?
expert.
Okay, MINER. Okay. So here are some changes they made. And once again, as I read these to you, you also got to think that this new plan is actually better, at least in my opinion. So in their original plan, they had 197 12,000 to 18,000 square foot lots. In the new plan, they have 97, but they're just a little bit bigger lots of 13,250 to 14,955. In the original plan, they had 25 bigger lots of 32,000 to 43,000 square feet. New plan, they divided that down into a couple of other components. They had 128 10,000 to 10,800 lots, so smaller. And then they even have some smaller ones, 27 8,000 square foot lots, then the 3 farm lots. So they also changed the total residential. In the original, it was 328. In the new one, it's 335. Let's see. The agricultural parcel is actually bigger. In the original plan, there are 2 half-acre parks. In the new plan, there are no parks. So the question is that a minor adjustment? Don't know. I think that's the question for the planning commission. They're gonna say, is this a minor adjustment? Don't know. We'll see. Then, has it actually expired? And that's probably a question that we'll have to battle out. I was told that your attorney gave an opinion of tolling, but I haven't seen anything. Have him call me so we can talk. Also, in their original plan, they had 100 senior residential units for senior living. And I think those have disappeared. So I don't know if that's a minor adjustment. That's kind of where I am. So let me just summarize. I think they have vested rights. The question is vested rights to what? I think they may have lost those vested rights because the 1 year expired. Because they didn't ask. And they submitted a new application.
For the exact same place? And
Well, for Erda Estates, but it's got the new concept in it. So what I would, I think one of these other options might work best to start to negotiate out some settlement of this, of making a better plan. Because if he takes it to litigation and wins, we've got a pretty ugly development. At least from my point of view. I don't even know if he'll win. I mean, that's the risk question the city's got to make.
Give us your opinion on, are we bound to follow chapter 9, or is there some way to move him over into current Erda code? without violating any laws or jeopardizing vested rights that may or may not be there.
Well, yeah, there's a way to solve this. There's a way to do that. A couple ways. We could do a development agreement and say you're locked into these benefits on the new land. The other, I hate to even mention, but it's, he files a lawsuit and we settle it, and there's how we settle it. So there's two ways to get there. There might even be others. I haven't thought all of them, but there's at least two ways to get there if they're willing to talk and work through those issues. I think chapter 9 is applicable to them at this point.
So under chapter 9, they can go back and do a modified, concept plan. That's in there, that they can go back and redo a concept plan. If he's vested in chapter 9, is he only vested to where he's at and then has to move forward, or can he go back in and redo a concept plan?
You still got the year.
Well, he has a year problem, but I think maybe that's a third option is go back and modify the concept plan.
Because I believe that's what
Chapter
the last
9.
application was this is a new concept plan. Unless I haven't seen the application, I don't know.
I would say I haven't submitted a new application.
It sure looks like a new application to me, but
What was it there?
It was, what I would say is an updated concept. And that's very different than submitting a new application. And also, I think I put some wording in there, I'll have to go back and look, I may miss it, but I think it was wording in there indicating. The other thing is, it's your system. I'm tied to this system that you guys have that has very little options. And I think that in the dropdown, I think I put something like, the only one that was even remotely relevant was a site plan review. Because I think actually what. And also, I submitted that at the direction of Erda City. That's what I was told to do to get here tonight. From Rochelle.
So,
So I have some real concerns about it, thinking, oh, you submitted a new application, you're out the door.
No, I
I'm
understand.
only one person and one vote, and I agree with John that this new concept's better than the other one.
Where's Rochelle getting her guidance from as far as the council?
She's doing it off of her expertise in,
So we getting all input?
when stuff comes to us, we get our input, and,
If it doesn't come to us, we don't worry about it. Is that what you're saying?
no, you get feedback from people, and if there's issues, then we address them.
philosophically, this is the way you set it up. Here are the rules, you go do. It's not you saying, here's how I'm gonna administer the rules. If you wanna tighten up what she does, change the rules.
And I agree with Jess when he said that I think his date started November 11th. And be it legal or not, I think it's right. And the reason I say that is if I do something and I get sued, I'm essentially stopped. And I would hate to have that happen, be sued, be stopped for 2 years. And then when the appellate court says, all right, you can move forward, have someone say, your time's up.
Can't you also put in for an extension and get sued?
Well, what you're really talking about is a concept of equity, and it's to tolling. I don't think there's any question that it started December 4th, 2019. The question is, does that 1 year stop while they're in litigation?
And it's a legal question, I don't know, but as far as whether it's right or wrong, it should have stopped.
It might have.
And,
That's what they're gonna certainly argue.
and I wouldn't want to go to a judge and say, hey, say it didn't stop. It's not right. So that's, like I say, just one opinion.
Most when they do that, though, they do the TRO, temporary restraining order. So you got to legally say you have to stop.
That often happens.
So my take on that one is, you know, that gives the recipe to resolve this thing, to work out a better solution.
And that very well could be the recipe. If he has the time and he's vested under Chapter 9, he can submit a new concept plan to our planning commission and let them start. And he can request a extension of time.
Are you requesting an extension on Tuesday for both? That was your in writing request tonight.
For both 1 year windows is, the ordinance says I can request for both, to me, it's logical that we would request for both. I mean, obviously, to me, the conditional use permit.
Well, I guess what is decided on Tuesday will kind of help us decide how we're gonna proceed.
I got one question about that. What's the notice requirements on that, John? Would that be a 10-day notice requirement? Is there a notice requirement?
Doesn't say.
And it actually says without hearing. It says the planning, for one of the two-year, one of the 2 year windows, it says that the planning commission can grant it without further hearing.
It
And I took that as a public hearing. So I take it as yeah, they have the ability to grant it, even with 24 hours notice.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to have them put it on their agenda, vote on it, make an action. If it wasn't legal, it could be questioned later.
And then if they pass it, when you sit down and start negotiating over sticky points.
You know, this is probably part of the reason that the county repealed their planned unit development chapter. It's confusing as can be in places. Rochelle thinks that there are 3 conditional uses. One as the preliminary, one is a concept, preliminary, and final. I don't read that. I read that there's one when you're all done. And that's what you can change the conditional use time period, that year. So after it's all done, you have a year to get your building permit. That's how I read that.
And that makes sense to me. To me, that's.
I had a question on that building permit too. Is that a building permit for a residence, a building, or is that a building permit to start sewer, water, roads?
As building permit or construction.
So I asked Erda City that question, and the answer I got was a building permit for a house, which I think is absolutely not supported by the ordinance. To me, it says a building permit. And that's it, a building permit. And so, yeah, my intention will be, if I need to, I will apply for a building permit. If that's for a small shed, it'll be for a small shed. But the response I got from Erda City was, it's for a house. And again, I don't think that's supported in the ordinance.
Well, yeah. And I think it actually talks about construction or a building permit. If you want to go, can you go backwards on your?
It simply says building permit, and it does say that it needs to, I think it went one too far.
No, it's right there in 5.
Construction has actually begun.
And, yeah, a building permit is issued and, okay.
Yeah, and construction. So is a water sewer line, I think that would qualify. I don't think it has to be for
Any permit I
residents.
receive from the city would fall under a good building permit.
Well, that's probably part of the problem with this ordinance.
It's
A building permit is something, a term of art to me, is you can build a building. I don't think you get a building permit for sewer.
Get an excavation permit.
Excavation, then they would have said
It
excavation.
is,
Fair enough. And if it is for a building, I'm happy to be open.
But I don't think that's even gonna be an issue if it's interpreted the way I think it should be interpreted. The real issue is the preliminary plan. When does that 1 year start? And is there a tolling? And I think there's enough ambiguity that we can maybe work out a deal.
Planning and zoning has the first step, right?
Yep.
I think we put the policy, what we'll allow, but every step goes through planning and zoning. We literally have no say in this. It'll be planning and zoning. We might get to to decide when a date starts. We might get to decide how something goes, how we're gonna interpret chapter 9. But every step in this is planning and zoning, not us.
Right, but if he started brand new today, it'd be the same, wouldn't it?
Would.
Everything would be planning and zoning. That's who
Right.
makes these decisions. That's who you,
So I think that's the decision we have to make, is where we let it start. If he's vested in chapter 9, he's vested in chapter 9.
well, I don't think, it's not on the agenda for the planning commission to make this determination of the 1 year, is it? I mean, he just made the request today.
No,
It doesn't really matter what their determination on the 1 year is. If they grant an extension, he's granted, right?
Or,
Well, it says it's rendered void. Not voidable, but void. It's of no effect if it goes beyond the 1 year. I don't know if it can be resurrected. Void's pretty significant language.
Are you suggesting a new application? I don't know about that. There's nothing in current Erda code that could give him his concept plan, original or modified, for him to apply with.
Well, if chapter 9 is applicable,
But if it's null and void, then it's not applicable.
the tolling, I just don't know how long he was in litigation, how long until, from December 4th to when the litigation started, and then when it ended, it starts again. So I don't know.
How much time passed between December 4th and litigation started?
So, just off the top of my head, Craig, you can probably help me some. So, Tooele County approved the PUD
December 4th,
December 4th,
2019.
2019, and then it was appealed as either that ordinance or one of the ordinances allows to Tooele County's, what's the right term? Appeal officer.
It was a county council,
Yeah,
it's the
they were
land use
actually the
authority.
appeal authority.
Land use authority.
So it was appealed to Tooele County Council, because they were the appeal authority. That took Tooele County over a year to rule. I'm assuming that there was probably a 30-day window on that. I may be wrong in that, but typically they probably had 30 days to appeal it. So that appeal occurred within 30 days. So, there's a 30-day window there, I guess you could say the clock is running. Then it took over a year for Tooele County Council to act as the appeal authority, hear the case, and deny the appeal. Then, I think they probably had 30 days to file their lawsuit. That's typical. So the Erda Community Association filed a lawsuit, I'm guessing 30 days after.
Confused a little bit, and I hate taking more time. It's probably important. You filed an appeal?
No, Tooele, like 127 citizens filed an appeal. The Erda City wouldn't have existed at that time. A number of citizens within Tooele County filed an appeal to Tooele County saying you should not have approved the PUD.
Okay, that helps me a lot.
Tooele County Council heard the arguments and says, we do not agree with you. The PUD was approved appropriately,
And that process took a year.
over a year. Then, because Tooele County ruled against,
The clock's not running during that
Yeah.
period.
then because in essence, Tooele County ruled in the PUD's favor, the Erda Community Association stepped in.
Okay, so when the appeal was eventually approved,
Denied, the bill was
it was
denied.
denied. How many, approximately how much time passed between that denial and
Filing the lawsuit.
filing of the lawsuit? Yes.
I'm thinking they have a 30-day window. John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have 30 days.
30 days
to file.
sounds right.
Okay, so I have some fuzzy dates here.
Okay.
We need more of this.
The planning commission approved it on 12/4/2019, and the lawsuit was filed on 7/2/2020. I didn't pick out the date when the appeal went to the county council. I don't think that's a tolling.
It's 30 days regardless. It's not much time.
Yeah. So that's about 211 days, give or take 0. That's what it is. And the appellate decision was entered on 12/22.
I don't see why a clock would be running while the citizen is waiting for government wheels to move. So I don't.
What do you mean government wills?
He's waiting for the appeal decision.
The appeal decision from the county council? I didn't even consider that as an important date for purposes of tolling.
My point is, I think the clock starts November 11th, give or take 30 days. That's
Okay, I don't want to argue with the chair, but what is the November date? I don't understand.
That is when
I thought
the court ruled.
I thought it was November 11th they ruled. You're saying it was entered on the 22nd, so.
The appellate decision was entered 12/22.
I thought it was the
Well,
11th.
hang on, let me look. I've got it right here.
Planning and zoning approved the bill, then we're talking about it, negotiate.
If I have the wrong day, then I have.
I don't think we,
Yeah.
November 10th, huh?
That's when it was filed. That's when it was not decided. Oh, yes, that's when it was filed. You're right.
Well, it's gonna be my opinion that the 1 year started. The day you could finally do something with your application was November 11th.
That's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says the date the planning commission approves the concept
Talking
plan.
about what is fair and right, as opposed to
What's legal?
red tape.
And I guess, again, I think we're gonna get to the same place. I mean, I think John is saying, hey, let's figure something out that works. I agree. But my one comment is, well, then why in September when I come and says, can we start this discussion, Erda City said to me, no, not until the court case is ruled on.
That's
Now,
okay,
I think
because
we can argue both directions.
It was told, if it's told, it was told during that time period.
Okay, then we're in agreement that it was told.
I think if you count the days, I don't know, I'd have to count the days. From November 10th,
I would hate to count days. He had 14 days here and then it stopped. And then he had 30 days in the middle somewhere it stopped. You can't even get an engineer to look at something in that amount of time.
Well, and especially if you want to look at the requirements for a preliminary plan. So in chapter 9, the requirements for a preliminary plan gives me, as Jake says, 80% to final plat engineering. The bid, I mean, I'll just be honest with you, the bid for just to get to the preliminary plan is $120,000. So, I mean, what we'd be arguing with the court, there ain't no way you're gonna do that in 14 days, 30 days.
Just something to be thinking about if the council has to make a decision on timing or tolling as it was put to us, something to be thinking about. I know where I stand.
So I'll even make a motion that our policy on this is that his time clock started November 10th because that's the date on that ruling.
I would,
And that will just be our city policy moving forward.
I
I
would,
think that's a bad call.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a bad call. Because that's not the date it starts. Even though you want to say it's fair. I think if we count the days, he might be under 336 days. If we do the tolling.
What do you mean he might be under 336 days?
But 1 year,
365 days?
365 days, I'm sorry. And I just counted the days, and my rough number is that he's probably if you take into consideration tolling, maybe 336.
So when it gets the extension Tuesday, then all this goes away anyway.
That's assuming that they will grant him.
Yeah, and I don't know if they will. So what I say is maybe we can resolve this and see if we can put together a better deal.
So how would that look?
How would the deal look?
Yeah, no. What would the procedure be to start that?
Well, hopefully Tuesday in the planning and zoning, they grant extensions to them. And then they bring to us, and then we can start talking about which both sides are amicable to how it's gonna end up.
Here's the concern I have is if we start this whole thing over again, if it's gonna open us up to another lawsuit by people who don't actually represent Erda.
It might.
And then we start this whole thing over again.
Well, the tolling would probably be more of an administrative, you can get sued for anything.
I know.
I think you just gotta make what you think is the best decision and don't make a decision based upon what you think somebody will do or based upon what somebody threatens to sue. Just make the right decision and go forward.
Well, in my opinion, we can't make the right decision because we can't say, this is the day we're gonna grant the extension. Planning Commission has to do that.
If the council doesn't come up with a decision on what the date is.
Well, it's not the council's call. It's a planning commission's call.
I was gonna say, what is the planning commission going to extend off of? Is that their call as well?
Probably.
We need to make it clear to them. John, is there any way you can make it to that planning commission meeting on Tuesday?
This Tuesday? Yeah, I think I can.
I'll be calling into it for our rezone, so I'll be out of town, but I'm already planning on calling in, talk to Jennifer about for our rezone, so if we're gonna do the rezone and this discussion, it's a great time to do it, I'm already calling.
Well, the question is it on the agenda?
No, it's not on the.
Not yet. It was just asked to be put on the agenda.
A member of the staff, such as our city attorney, would have to put it on their agenda.
Or the
As one option.
Because we can't anymore. Shots fired, shots fired.
Will that start at 7? Or is it 5?
7.
It'll start at 7, and it'll be at the Erda City Firehouse.
So they're going there immediately. Okay. Well, I guess the question is, are we willing to make a deal? Are you guys willing to make a deal?
Absolutely.
So would you want it to look more like the second proposal, or do you have other things you want to put in there?
I think the second proposal looks a lot better.
Right, do you want something else in there is what I'm saying?
No.
Nothing came to my mind except for this. I'm probably uncomfortable with the agricultural preserved ground being held by an HOA.
I think it's too late, I think that's what it is.
What's that?
That's what the condition was.
No.
Actually, an HOA or something like it.
I think it should be held by an established conservation entity, not an HOA that can, at some point, my fear is that at some point, the HOA is gonna get sick and tired of that noise across the street and the dust that comes off of that baler. And I think we need to sell this property and have it developed, and we'll all take some money, put it in our pocket, and we'll have another 135
If
homes.
it's HOA or something like it, then do something like it, then I guess it'll
My
be
intention
Darryl.
was not to have it with the HOA.
It'll be
My
Darryl's
intention was
call.
to have a preservation,
Yeah.
you know, somebody hold it, not the HOA, because I don't want to burden those houses with it. I think somebody's farming it, then let that be the person responsible.
I think we need to get through step one before we start talking step two.
That's true.
Well, or
That's true.
if I could change anything in it, I would make the lots on that south side a little bit bigger.
I would agree. I think that condensing some more units sort of way and then making those lots bigger would
To
help
be
the
honest with you,
public.
we're-
Yeah.
I'll tell you, to be honest with you, it's water. But if we need a bigger buffer there,
I think it would just help us all out and
If the lot was big
On that
enough,
road.
somebody could have animals there, the people with the 5 acre lots would feel a lot more comfortable about someone who's somewhat in the same thread as them living in their backyard. But
my other thought was just to bring this out all the way down to, just put a bigger gap. Don't even have to be 8 acres.
Narrow strip.
I'd rather see a trail back there with some a little bit larger lots. In all honesty, than a strip of ag protection that would just be weeds usable.
All right. Anything else from you, John?
No, let me just look at something here real fast. Or similar entity, I think you're exactly right. Who's your attorney? Who told you there was a tolling?
So the attorney we would probably use is Bob Jenkins.
Okay,
Now, I haven't,
you haven't engaged him?
well, I haven't spoken to him recently. He's done work on this, so probably check it. If not him, Britt Baker.
I'm just trying to think of how to make this work. I've got an idea, so. I think let's assume that the planning commission will. That we've made a deal. As long as you guys trust each other and we'll be able to go forward. I can probably convince the planning commission that there's a toll. I could also convince them it's not.
Is that shed and building, that application ready, just in case?
Well, no, it's gotta have a preliminary, and that would take
It's not gonna help.
4 months.
You just put an
5 months.
outhouse on it.
Shed.
John?
It's an interesting thought. I had thought about that too. Putting in an application on the 146 acres for a building lot. Now, I don't know how that impacts this, but yeah, I mean, obviously we've thought of all of our options.
Well, we'll see how Tuesday goes. All right.
I think we're with you, Darryl. I think what you said there and through that presentation makes perfect sense to me.
And if you remember what I've been saying for 6 months is I think I want Erda City's input. That's what I'm saying for 6 months. I've been in here literally begging. So this is a side note. I know we're done, but I've approached Erda City over 10 times asking for tonight. So at least 3 times I've approached you guys in a public comment. I've met with city council, 2 city council members. I've met with 2 planning and zoning members. I've met with Michelle twice. I've stood in front of planning and zoning on 2 or 3 occasions and asked for these discussions. So I've literally begged for the city to engage in this conversation.
11 times the charm.
Must have been. I appreciate that.
Did you take notes of things these guys said they want changed? Okay. If you guys are all right with that?
Brief council representative reports.
Brief, yeah.
Only not 20.
Well, I got one, I think will tie in stuff for Jennifer, so we don't have to do an official email type deal. What I'm gonna talk about is ties in with the emergency management and the water mitigation. And I know Scott had got some calls about worried residents about sandbags and stuff. And also in my disaster mitigation meeting and emergency disaster and declarations meeting, and anyway, they all talked that the city had to have something to begin with, like the first building block. And then if that building block topples, then the county will swoop in and assume and do all this stuff. So in that, Scott and I, on the emergency management committee, he decided that maybe we should get some sand. So then we got a hold of Jess to be the third wheel to say, yeah, go ahead and for emergency management type of thing, go ahead and order that. And we used a credit card and went through the system, and there is at least 500 sandbags that are put together and ready to go.
Some of them have already been picked up. There's a few residents that know they have a problem, and
Potential.
so there's probably a dozen, probably 24 of them that are already gone.
But if everybody's been watching the news, you know what's going on. And in that meeting that I was to in the middle of March, well, the 13th, from the February meeting to the March meeting, both reservoirs have gone up 3 feet. And that's with the cooler temperatures and stuff like that. And back at that meeting, it's changed already several times. There was over 23 inches of water here and 27 in Vernon. Well, that's like 6 inches more here than Vernon as well. So there's a lot of water sitting up there waiting to come down. And as far as maybe around Erda itself, you don't think much flood, but if Settlement and Middle Canyon flood, the routes come down to Erda. One from Middle Canyon comes down by the hospital and over lake and out through that way, and I think follows the railroad grade and goes out that way. The other one goes down like the side of 112, and then another one was out in the flats. But so
here's what I've found out the last several days. I've been scouting. So I'm looking at all the places that water came down in '83. Some of those places up east of me, so this is in Kale's district. Some of those can't happen again because of the way that roads have been put in and homes have been put in. But there's also some real problems up there because some of the flood canals, washes really, that were historically created by floods, not only in '83, some of those have been taken out. And then there's some problems along some of those along Arrowhead Road. Arrowhead Road, for one, will divert any water that makes it through this canal that I've just talked about that's been filled in. Any water that makes it through, that comes through there, is going to spread out into several different homes. Then it's going to be collected by Arrowhead, and it's going to dump onto Erda Way or onto Drew Bay Road. And then there are some problems with culverts going north on Drew Bay Road that have not been maintained, and some of them haven't been put in adequately. I mean, they're just not big enough. So we have to pray for a smaller release and less flooding. Down by
Did you think you were gonna say that like this time last year?
yeah, no, I didn't.
Hope we don't get too much water.
Just for clarification, he's not saying to pray for no rain.
Yeah.
Just for a reason.
Pray for slow runoff and our wisdom on our part. So the water that Terry just talked about that'll end up coming down out of Settlement Canyon ends up into diversion ditches that bring it down just south of the new hospital, and it takes a northwest angle towards Erda. And there are actually, I haven't been out to inspect them all, but there are actually canals out there that have been cut to keep the water headed the right direction. One of those ends up going down just south of the sewer plant, just on the south edge of the sewer plant. There's a problem there because when the sewer plant was put in, they put their power line coming from Erda Way up to the sewer plant in that canal, and they filled it in. So when water comes down there now, it's going to hit what's called 1200 West. It's going to hit there, and it's going to spread out. It's probably going to erode that 1200 West. It's going to hit Erda Way, and then it's gonna head south just like it did in 83. By the time it gets down to about Dick Salt's house, it's gonna puddle and it's gonna wash across the road towards Ron Belinder's house. And from there, maybe the culvert or maybe the borrow pit will keep it going west until it gets onto Air Force property, but we're not sure because we don't know how much water is gonna come down. So, all that being said, I'm trying to talk to people that are in the pathway, people who own property where canals have been filled in. I don't know, what kind of right do we have, John, to go in and redig those canals where they've been filled in?
You're digging on private property.
Yeah, we're on private property, but it's obvious, the culvert comes through, it's about a 2-inch culvert, or a 2-foot culvert, comes through the railroad tracks, and that's where it's gonna come pouring through, and then it comes right into a wash that's been there for decades and decades, and then it crosses, Moyle Road, and it goes about another 100 feet, and all of a sudden it just disappears. And that water's gonna come flooding down into that canal. It's gonna hit that spot where the canal disappears, and it's gonna spread out like this, and it's gonna create not only a lot of erosion, but a lot of flooding in homes. Is our best approach for me to just go talk to those people and say, look, come look at this? What would you like us to
Can
do?
the city do like an eminent domain where we can keep them canals
Well,
going?
we can, but it takes a year.
Yeah, that would take time. That would take
What
time.
I would do is talk to the people. Are you thinking about that the city will pay to dig the canals?
Well, I don't know, but I'm thinking between me and Craig and Terry,
Fund it if it gets bad enough.
me and
wouldn't
Craig
it?
and Terry, we're really only talking about 200 yards of a wash, you know, that needs to only be like 2 feet wide, 3 feet deep, something like that.
If you can get their consent, then you want to pay.
And we could
somebody to
we
dig
could
it,
just do that.
Just do it. Because if you go to them and say, we want your property and we want you to pay to dig it, they're gonna say no.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you say, let us dig in here so we can protect it, and you convince them and they give that consent, then do it.
Okay. Okay, and that will be my approach, I think, as we move farther west too. We say, look, we got this problem coming here. The problem on 1200 West, though, I don't know how to solve that.
Hopefully don't have to.
Where that's been filled in. Yeah, that would be the best thing, is if we don't have to. But there were several homes down through there that were filled up with water. Their basements filled up with water. The Sutton home filled up, the Salt home filled up.
Talking about 83.
Yep, in 83. And then going north from Erda Way, you get down to Patriarch Gull's home. It actually floated. There was you don't need to know this, but there was a program back then to seal basements from the inside because everybody had high water and it was seeping into basements, and they could seal your home and stop the water from coming in. Well, they did that exactly on Cordell Gull's home, and it started to lift the home. Especially right smack in the middle of the floor in the basement, it started to push it up, and it started to make a crown in the upstairs floor. And they had to punch holes in the concrete to let the water in, because it was floating the house.
Question.
Houseboats.
We're asking the citizens for consent. Do we need to have some sort of
That sucker.
form that they sign
We would have to have
and
legal.
then keep record of
Al's gonna
that we have?
fill up with this poor deal.
So if you get people
Anyway.
consent, call me, give me their name, give me their proper description, I'll draft something up for you, and
Okay.
take and get it signed.
I'm afraid there'll be problems down around Church Road and Tom's Lane, where there was in 83 also.
So to continue on that, we need to decide, we need to move that sand and sandbags.
I'll start moving the sandbags tomorrow. We got all the sandbags filled, all that we bought, 500.
Do we need to get more or?
We got
just go
filled.
with what we got and wait?
I don't know. That's probably something we need
How
to.
much plain old sand is left over, not in bags?
I haven't been down to see, but there's gotta be probably a couple of yards or 3
Yeah, there's-
yards.
there's a little.
Probably we could fill another 200 bags. But we put it on pallets so I can lift it onto a truck and we can get it to my house so that it's out of the church parking lot and so that we have a little bit of control about where it goes.
How much longer can we keep it in the church parking lot?
Well, I don't wanna ask them, it's already been there a week and a half. I don't wanna ask them for any more time. That one little, that
Really?
little pile, I don't think, we'll just let it ride. But we'll get all those pallets and all those sandbags out of there.
About 3 yards.
Yeah, so that
I'm
there's
just
only,
thinking that's a great place to distribute, and
it is.
the need is still here.
But if it's on a trailer, on pallets already, we can take it to where we
Deliver.
You know, if there was a project, we had a big project on Church Road in 83 to save Harvey Russell's mink ranch because it was flooding, because the water would not go down Rabbit Lane. We hope that problem's not still there, but I'll check. We did open up that culvert so that more water will go down Rabbit Lane.
We also need to maybe put out on the Erda website if there's people that'll volunteer people and equipment for emergency situations. So we can have kind of like a call out.
Yeah, if we had a list of people that we could call on if we need them, yeah.
To have
There are
equipment,
several people around that have backhoes and,
trucks and
yeah, things like that.
that we could use, like even when the wind was so bad, if we had the access to people that could do that, we'd just send them to the areas and
Maybe try and create some sort of emergency management form where we can let the community go on and just, we have a big list of what they're willing to help with and
just kind
machinery.
of create a farm, and then they can put what they have and what they're willing to do, and if they have certain,
Yeah, our state did that several years ago. Created a whole list of people that had equipment and abilities, and whether you have fuel, whether you have equipment, whether you have manpower, whether you have tarps, whether anything that you have that could be used in an emergency situation, you would list it, and you had your phone number there. In an emergency, they would call.
Okay, I'll try and come up with something and see.
where's everybody park at Excelsior Academy?
So, Scott,
In the water, take your boat to school.
communication has gone out.
Yeah, right now,
If
it goes all the way back.
Citizens of Erda know where the sandbags are right now.
Okay.
They know they're at the stake center.
Okay,
If we move those,
then there
emergency
might be
comes,
confusion.
we're gonna have some confused people, and so I don't know how many parking spots are being taken up, but it seems like
About a dozen.
Hopefully down the road, this is gonna be a while though, it's not gonna be like next week or whatever, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Be
that's
able to
what,
move them and then tell everybody, here it's where they are now.
Because
if
when
we
in
can keep
80,
them there for 3 or 4 more weeks, it just makes more sense to me, but if it's causing issues, then we'll move them. And
guess it just depends when that.
Cause the wind blows
Switch
down there
flips.
quite a bit too. And blow that sand all over.
yeah, yeah. Okay, then, I'll work on that.
So we're gonna move it?
I'll find out what the stake president says,
Okay.
and then Terry and I will consult a little bit, because I am worried about them disappearing. You know,
Not getting used for the
Well,
purpose we
right,
intend.
exactly.
The right individuals.
Okay. All right, any other representative report?
Yep, I'll try to keep them.
You got 30
Brief.
seconds.
The county economic opportunity has some grant money available. Tooele City has really been sucking up the majority of it, and I'm talking tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars going to them. They're asking her to work. Where can you use that? It's very specific how you can use it to get things shovel ready. We're like a year away from having some of these commercial projects where we can help get grant money to help them. But in the meantime, the question has come up, do we want to do a study, an economic opportunity study? We could largely get a grant to pay for that. If we want to do a study on what kind of economic development, how we can support it, how to bring it in, we could probably get that funded from the Economic Opportunities Board. Is that an application we want to make? Do we want to do a study on economic development?
Kinda running out of areas to develop.
Well, we got someone come to the planning commission wanted to change 18 acres to commercial. none of that's developed. Ochre Point, a lot of commercial in that. We've had other people want to change to commercial. This is the question I'm asking the council, do we want to apply so we can have a study done on how to bring economic development businesses into the city?
Businesses, I'm just saying that
I don't see what,
property's bought up already, so.
I don't see what harm a study will do to let us know what options are even feasible.
That's, I look at it and say, let's see what kind of businesses would be attractive, what kind of businesses would be beneficial to us. If it's a study, I think we could get 100% funded through a grant. But I didn't want to say yes until I talked to this group about submitting and trying to get funding for a study like that.
I'd be in favor if it's 100%,
I'm a yes.
Okay?
99%.
A lot of the stuff they have is matching funds, but I think this, we can get it funded 100%. So that was it from economic development.
It's not my area of expertise. Seems like you zone it commercial, you put water and sewer nearby it, and the businesses come. What does the study mean, you know?
I can tell you that
There might be more to it than that, like, for
there's a
example,
lot more to it than that.
how do we get a Texas Roadhouse instead of a McDonald's?
Just,
I'm interested in that.
just going to these meetings with, Twila City's the big player in there, but also Grantsville City, they have full-time employees that do nothing but try to find and bring business and support them in. I think we're a long ways from that, but there's an awful lot to it other than zoning a piece of property commercial and telling the owner to get after bringing those utilities in.
Also have a grant department, but that's all they do is sit down and write grants, applications for grants.
Yeah, and if we can do everything possible to set the future up well for when we do have those people, it's gonna be a lot way smoother. If we can set up stuff for our future city managers and grant writers and all that. So I think this would help.
Well, let's see what we can do.
And then planning and zoning, coming up, they have a rezone for a piece of commercial along the highway, part of which is this Erda Estates, along Erda Estates, it's not part of Erda Estates. Last week they talked and discussed changing subdivision ordinances to add trails and connectivity of trails into it. They want to make some road changes and requirements of how roads connect to future development and properties next to it. They want to make some changes in the land use ordinances there. The biggest thing that we're needing in the planning commission is another planning commission member. We haven't had anyone from Kel's district in a long time.
We just put one in.
He resigned.
He went to one meeting and resigned. So we need to get somebody else in that position as quick as possible. They're asking for another member, so.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think he's in my district, Alan.
You got anybody on a list or anybody you think
I
of?
got a few people I
Or
can think of, I'll get a hold of, and
do we need to try to come up with some way to get some more names?
yeah, if you guys got suggestions, shoot them over to
Did
me.
that Hatfield turn it down, or?
I haven't gotten a hold of him yet. I got a hold of Jim first, and he said yes, and
Larry Hatfield?
I can post something on the Erda Facebook
These
page.
three guys right
Let them know.
Everybody everywhere.
yeah. See what these guys come up with and what I come up with, and then if there's no other options, we'll throw it out there.
Facebook it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, our rules say you get to appoint them, so.
yeah. Yep. Rather take my time with it, make sure it's someone good. I thought Jim was pretty good, but if he didn't want to do it, he didn't want to do it. Rather not throw someone in there that really wants to do it, because usually there's a reason someone really wants to have
It could
power,
be
and I don't
too.
like that very much.
Yep. Okay,
I found the numbers on the dispatch if you want to hear them.
yes.
The old was $32,837 and we were paying $8,002.09. It's gone up to $37,533.
5,000.
So $4,696.
Dispatch inflation. Okay,
And-
what
and-
else?
Got the thing on the League of Cities and Town, it only went up $15.
I think we approved
Yeah,
that,
we
right?
improved that from last.
Okay, quick little IT thing, Google is raising the standard licenses, which all of us have, including planning commission members and Rochelle and Jen, all $20 a month each. And they're raising, for non-commitment people like us, month-to-month people, they're raising the price from $20 to $23. We can avoid that price increase by doing annual renewable agreements. And I don't see our commission members going down, and I don't see our council members going down anytime. And so my suggestion would be to just do the agreement, keep the price the same, and the council, if it wants to switch off of Google or change numbers or something like that, they can do so and just make that decision once a year.
Can you change users?
Oh, of course, this is a number of accounts we have, that's it.
It'll have to
It's kind of a no-brainer.
monthly checks.
We're not gonna get any less.
Yeah, I agree. You okay with that? Okay, then I'll just tell them to go ahead and proceed.
Because in fact, there's one check that they said that's in kind of dispute now, so we're kind of working through that.
Do we need a closed session? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and second, we adjourn this meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Appreciate it, but
This is a big commitment to hang around here with us for 2.5 hours. Oh, yeah. Thank you for your time.
Nice.